So potentially, had Frazier's corner not stopped the fight, Ali may have not been able to continue the 15 that Frazier would have been.
Either way, these two men, it was their finest moment, and they took it out on each other, and what they left in the ring was absolutely nothing. They gave it their all.
There was obviously a lot of hatred, a lot of bad words, bad blood between both fighters. How much of that
Not
was...
really.
I was going to say, how much of that was real? How much was that staged for
Well,
promotion?
on Ali's part, it was never real. It was never real. Ali was a master showman. Probably, I've had the pleasure of working with some great individual personal promoters. Ali was the best, head and shoulders. But Ali was putting Joe on. He meant nothing by it. But then he hit a chord. He hit a chord when he finally called Joe the Gorilla. The Gorilla's going to go to Manila. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, the Gorilla. I'm gonna get the Gorilla in Manila. It'll be a thrill and a chiller when I get the Gorilla in Manila.
From
right.
then on, and I was very close to Joe's brother, and he used to tell me that Joe just hated Ali, and he still does. Ali hates nobody. Ali is a gentle, peaceful man. He really is a lovely man. Unfortunately, today, he's suffering from, as we all know, from Parkinson's. They get called it Parkinson's syndrome, but it's Parkinson's and bordering on a little dementia. But what a great man he was.
Yeah.
Or is. He's still here.
Absolutely. And they fought 3 times, of course, in the 70s, 71, 74, and 75. My question to you is, when Ali got in the ring with Joe Frazier, I doubt that it was his prime, although he was heavyweight champion for the 75 fight. Had Ali fought Frazier in, let's say, the late 60s, when he had more...
There'd be no contest.
Okay.
No contest.
Yeah, that's the most...
See, I have a couple of heroes in life for what they've done. Strange, opposite things, and here I'm on Israeli radio. They may not agree with what I say, but I'm going to say it. A man named Ted Williams was my boyhood hero. He may have been the greatest baseball player of all time, except during World War II, he answered the call to his country, and he fought as a Marine pilot, getting shot down, and he was a hero. Came back to play for the Boston Red Sox. The team I've always followed. And in Korea, when there was problems, he volunteered again. He lost actually 4.5 years of his prime. Now, Ali, here's where I become a little controversial.
Sure.
Ali is a man who believes in his faith. Now, you and I don't have to believe in it, but you have to respect people who generally are peaceful and believe in their faith. Ali refused to step forward to be inducted because, as he said at that time, we're all there in Houston, who were there and saw it. He says, I have no argument with the Vietnamese, and they've never done anything to me, and my religion will not allow me to fight. Now, I'm not going to go any further than to say that Ali, that's his belief. Now, I'm not getting into, the other things that we all know and we all do not like. But in this case, he was sincere, and he lost 3.5 years of his prime athletic prowess. And that's about it. That's all I can say about that.
And switching gears to baseball, you mentioned the Boston Red Sox, being a fan of Ted Williams. Now, I understand that you have family members that played for the Boston Braves. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, my Uncle Eddie, God bless him. In fact, in 1928, matter of record, my Uncle Eddie Saltman married my Aunt Edie in between the halves. He used to have double headers of a Boston Braves. It was the Boston Bees, actually, then. Boston Bees, Cincinnati Reds baseball game, and they got married at home plate with a rabbi officiating.
Wow, that's awesome.
But my Uncle Milt played for the Philadelphia Athletics, and he was kind of my hero. He's my father's youngest brother of 7 brothers, and they were all athletes, except for my Uncle Jakey, who was a paraplegic, and so he was a bookie, so we kept everything in the family.
All right, okay, so that's the way to do it. And speaking of your background, when you grew up, it was during the Great Depression. I'll bring this up because America right now is going through some tough financial times. What is your message to say to people that are maybe concerned, worried, hey, how are we going to get out of this? How are we making through these tough times?
I have no message. I have no message. I'm like anybody else who's a citizen who believes deeply in Israel, believes deeply in the United States. And I'm writing a book right now. I've got 63 chapters done. It probably won't get published. It might, who knows, on optimism. And my attitude throughout my life, I've been blessed. I'm one of the very few men in life who've worked in industries entertainment and sports that he always enjoyed doing since he was a kid and was able to make a living at it. So my advice to anybody is just keep going forward, or as the great late Satchel Paige would say, and do you know who Satchel Paige was?
Sure, absolutely a great pitcher in the Negro Leagues, and had he been allowed to pitch in the majors, would have been one of the greatest ever in the major leagues.
Right. Well, they brought him up, and nobody knows how old he was.
Right.
But he would have the expression, and I say this to everybody who may be listening, anywhere in the world, his expression was, don't look over your shoulder, somebody may be gaining. Now, that simply means keep your chin up, all those different euphemisms, or whatever you want to call them. Just keep going forward and just literally, do the best you can, and somehow things work out.
It's a great message. It's really the only thing we can do anyway, so it's the best thing to do. I want to go more into your background because your family home was a place that a lot of famous, influential people spoke, came by to your house. Who do you remember?
That's true.
Who do you remember from those times?
Oh, God, I remember everybody. Well, as a matter of fact, my father, where I grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, many, many Irish people. We had a wonderful, strong, small Jewish community, but many Irish people. But I will tell you this, that at my father's house, let me go back further. When I was a kid, I lived in my grandmother's house, and I can remember it. We lived there till I was 5 years old, and my grandmother in Cambridge, Massachusetts, rented out the top floor to Harvard Law students. And many times, some of the professors would come there and hold impromptu seminars. And among the two, I didn't know who they were at the time. As I got old later, I appreciated what had happened, because I was just a little kid, and I was bounced on the knee or talked to by these various people. And one turned out to be Judge Louis Denbitz Brandeis, who was the first Jewish Supreme Court justice, and a wonderful, wonderful man of democracy. And Felix Frankfurter, another great Jewish jurist. They would come there. They were, at the time, teaching at Harvard Law School. Then at my father's house, his best friend, growing up in Cambridgeport, Massachusetts, was a man named Thomas Francis O'Neill. My father had 7 brothers, as I said, and I was the first Saltman boy born, and he did not want to get any of his brothers upset. So at my bris, Thomas Francis O'Neill, Uncle Tip, who went on to become Speaker of the House of the United States Congress,
Sure.
He held me at my bris.
Wow.
And among the people that hung out from time to time playing pinochle or casino or poker with my dad was a man named Eamon de Valera, who went on to become the first president of Ireland.
Wow.
But with my roots in Israel, although I never met him, my father's cousin, who they've called the general, was a man named Matti Hud. And I believe he was a general during the Yom Kippur War and with the Air Force, and I think he also, I may be mistaken, but I believe he was the first chairman of El Al.
Wow, truly impressive. So you had a lot of...
Well, in fact, and my partner in many, many endeavors, I haven't talked to him in years, maybe he's listening, was Hezi Carmel, who at the time was the Consul General to the United States. And he went back home to live and work in Herzliya. So my roots are deep in Israel. I was part of the Maccabeah game movement. I was honored by the American Friends of the Hebrew University. So when you asked me to come on the show, I want you to know how honored I am and how thrilled I am.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for several weeks now since this interview was booked. And again, it's truly touching for you to be on Lewis Live on Israel Sports Radio. And I want to move on to the entertainment industry because you've had a lot of influence there as well, in addition to sports. The Jackie Gleason show, I'm a big fan of that show. Now, obviously, I didn't watch it when it was going live. I watched the reruns, I'll be honest with you about that. But great show. And also worked with the Leave It to Beaver show and Mr. Ed. So talk about those experiences with the television industry.
Well, basically, I was Vice President Promotion, Marketing, and Advertising for MCA, the Music Corporation of America, working for a great man named Lou Wasserman, who truly was a giant in the entertainment industry and a benevolent despot. We had an interesting combination. I had been found in Cleveland by a man named D.R. Barton, where I was working at a television station, and he had only sent 2 people to MCA in all the history, 2 guys from Cleveland. I was the second one, a Jewish publicist, and 32 years earlier, he sent another Jewish publicist, and that was Lou Wassman. So we had an instant rapport. As for Mr. Ed and Leave It to Beaver and Wagon Train and Have Gun Will Travel and so many shows over the years, I don't know where to start. But when you ask about Leave It to Beaver, one of the promotions I tried to do at MCA, we were selling the shows into rerun or syndication. So I decided, as a message to all of the stations who were buying it, I made a deal with a company in China that made little toys, plush toys. So I had them make miniature beavers. And I sent them out all over the country, and people were getting sick out of it. And then one day, Sonny Werblin, who eventually was the man who owned the Jets and so forth, he was one of the bosses. He came running into my office. He had this on his desk. He says, "What is this thing?" I said, "What do you mean, what is this thing?" "It's a beaver." He says, "No, it looks like a little rat. Did you send this out to all of our clients?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get rid of them right away." So I didn't know what to do with it, except that my brother-in-law, Sidney, owned a small 5 and dime on the Jersey Shore. And I said, "Sidney, here, take them, see if you can sell them." And he sold them as little keychains, and we made out all right.
Absolutely. And I got to know, it might sound like a bit of a cheesy question, but what was Jackie Gleason like?
I don't know Jackie that well. My job was just to promote him when he came from on a train, when he was moving his headquarters from California to Miami, where he was going to do the Jackie Gleason show with the music and the June Taylor dances and so forth. And what I did was put together a train that went from Union Station, Los Angeles, to Miami, with stops all along the way. And in every city that we stopped, we would put on newspaper columnists or media from, remember in those days there were only 3 television stations and 7 radio stations in the market. That was the law. And so we'd put them on at every station I put on a jazz band. And what did happen, Jackie Gleason, if you really remember, if you look at the reruns, he loved wearing vests. And he had this wonderful, wonderful car with all of his clothes. And one day, in those days, I was a lot skinnier than I am now. And I was 6 feet. And I walked in, and I'm looking, his closet was open. I'm looking in his closet. He said, "Hey, kid," he said, "you like these vests?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What's your size?" I said, "Well, I'm a 40 regular, Mr. Gleason." He said, "Well, go over here. You can have one of my dream vests." I said, "What's a dream vest?" Well, if you remember his girth, he was a big man. His dream vest said he could fit into a 40 regular, so he gave me this reversible red with plaid on the other side vest, and I wore it for quite a while. So he was a hard-drinking, hard-playing, very magnanimous man to the people who were his friends. For example, there was I'll never forget, one night we were in a place called Toots Shores, which at the time was a legendary watering hole in New York. And Jackie Gleason and Toots were always making bets like who could run around. The big guys, they were, 250, 300 pounds apiece. And they liked their food and they liked to drink. And they'd bet who could run around the corner and beat each other for silly bets. Well, one day he was in his cups, and a waiter came over and he says, "Here, I'm going to give you a tip." And he says, here's $100. And he said to the kid, he says, "What's the biggest tip you ever got?" He says, $100, Mr. Gleason. And Jackie says, "That's good. What's the biggest tip next to that $100? He says, $50, Mr. Gleason. "Oh, yeah? Who is the bum who gave you the $50? "Well, Mr. Gleason, it was you." He was a magnanimous guy. He loved to gamble. He loved to drink. He could write beautiful music, and he had great timing as a comedian.
He was certainly known for having that drawing personality where everyone would be around him, but, like you said, known as a drinker and known as a bit of a gambler, right?
Right.
Now, I want to move to international business because you pretty much conquered the sports world and the entertainment world. You went out to international business, and you were involved with creating the plastic credit cards, because people forget that it was not
that's
plastic.
Interesting. Where did you get all this information that happens to be true? That's not listed anywhere.
How
the heck, boy, Ari, you've done homework on me. I was with a company called Pilgrim Plastic Products, PPP, in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm a young fellow. I've been married about 3 years at the time. And they did printing on plastic, like the little calendar cards that you may remember in the United States were giving out at banks for advertising, a little plastic ruler, stuff like that. And along with Billy Epstein, I don't know if Billy's still with us tonight. He's a great guy. We went out and made a pick. At that time, all credit cards were either cardboard or they were a company called Address Graph Linograph out of Natick, Massachusetts. And these were little tin holders for cardboard on the inside, and that was your credit card. And we went out to Illinois and made a deal and convinced Standard Oil of Ohio. Ohio was called, S-O-H-I-O. I'm trying to go back in my memory. I think I'm pretty sure. And we convinced them that they needed plastic. They could do it with plastic. Came back to Boston, and Joe Epstein, Billy's father, who handled the printing presses and everything, printed the first plastic credit cards, and it was for Standard Oil of Illinois, but for some reason Ohio was involved too. Standard Oil, and those are the first credit cards, and the rest is history.
In addition to that, you became an international businessman with infomercials to Japan. So how'd you get involved with that? It's a really unique idea.
I know. Listen, as I said in the beginning of this conversation, I'm one of the luckiest guys. You know, right now, I'm sitting here, I'm 80 years old, and just recently Susan, my fiancée, ran for me the only party I've ever had in my entire life, and it was a blast. It was fantastic. It was like 150 of my closest friends, and they were my closest friends. And it was a trip down memory lane, and I suddenly realized the only time I had a party before, if you want to call it a party, was my bar mitzvah down in the synagogue of Congregation Beth Israel in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the basement. And there was myself, at the time, my 6 uncles and my dad. That made 8, and 3 men from the congregation. That made Dominion plus me. And my grandmother made, she made honey cake. My mother made kugel, and they brought in schnapps, Slivovitz, and rye whiskey. And that was the only party I ever had. So suddenly I had this party. It was like a trip down memory lane. And you're asking me questions I hadn't thought of in a long time.
Wow.
Anyway, what was the question? I got off on the wrong track.
Well, I was very curious about the Japanese infomercials.
Japan.
Yeah.
I was acting as an advisor to a lady named Katie Williams, who is, as a matter of fact, kind of a legend in the infomercial world. She was bigger than Guthrie Renker, which is a huge firm today, before they were big, called Williams International. And I had lived and worked in Japan with the Ali fights, and before that, when I was in the United States Army, I was sports director of Armed Forces Radio in Japan, and I had an awful lot of contacts, and I was acting as her consultant. She was the chairman of the board. In fact, she's getting a Life Achievement Award in about 4 weeks from what they call the Electronic Retailing Association. And with that in mind, a very nice young man came to the office by the name of Tsubohiko, Tsubohiko, Kuboki, a Japanese man. At the time, he was about 35 years old, and he just started a company called Frontline. He was looking for products to go to Japan. I took immediate liking to him, and he took an immediate liking to me, and we found a product called the Abflex, which became an overnight sensation, and we were able to import it in Japan and export it from the United States. And it was a major 8-figure success. And since that time, T and I have done work on many, many products. We have new products in the pipeline right now. I don't know what's going to happen with them. Many have made it, many fail, and which reminds me, you're talking about my successes, but there have been a lot of things, never a failure, but there have been a lot of things that don't work. So anybody who thinks, or as Andy Williams would say, as I was telling my a little granddaughter, Jillian, the other night, who's an aspiring singer. I said, you know, honey, Mr. Williams used to tell me it took only 20 years to become an overnight success. So getting back to your question about the depression, getting you back about work and so forth, there's no replacing hard work if you believe in what you have.